You're about to experience firsthand what happens when two of the most influential planets meet. As we are speaking, there's a major conjunction taking place. The effects are already beginning to build, and if you're sensitive to these type of energies, you may feel this meeting harder than anyone else ever could. The part you feel first may not be the part anyone warned you about. The strangest thing about today is that awareness is not required. Someone can know the exact time of the conjunction, study every meaning behind it, and still miss what it is showing them. Meanwhile, another person can know nothing about the Moon or Saturn and still make a choice today that quietly changes what happens next. This is not an exam you pass by studying the sky. Its influence appears through what people naturally do, what they suddenly take seriously, what they can no longer pretend matters, what they choose to protect, pursue, or finally stop giving their energy to. That means even the people who laugh at astrology are still living through the same day, making decisions beneath the same sky. They do not have to believe in the conjunction to reveal what it is pulling out of them. The real difference is not between the people who are affected and the people who are not. It is between those who notice what today is revealing and those who only understand it after the choice has already been made. The fastest way to ruin today's energy is to abandon something the moment it stops feeling exciting, because this conjunction can remove the thrill from a path without removing its value. And that difference matters. The excitement may fade, the rush may disappear, and the thing that once made you feel certain may suddenly feel ordinary. But ordinary does not always mean wrong. Sometimes the moon gives you the feeling, but Saturn asks, what remains when the feeling leaves? Anything can look important while it is exciting. Its true value appears when the excitement is gone. That is where many people make the mistake. They assume that losing enthusiasm means losing alignment. So they walk away too quickly, not realizing that today may be testing whether there was ever anything real beneath the initial spark. This does not mean forcing yourself to stay in something empty. It means paying attention before you leave. Ask, what is actually gone? Is the path truly finished? Or has the novelty simply worn off? Because Saturn does not care how powerful the beginning felt. It wants to know whether the path can survive an ordinary day. The moon wants you to manifest during this conjunction. Saturn wants to know whether you are ready to live with what you are asking for. That is the disagreement. The moon increases desire. It makes the result feel close, possible, almost within reach. You may suddenly want more money, more attention, more love, more success, or a completely different beginning. And in that moment, the desire can feel so strong that receiving it seems like the only thing that matters. But Saturn immediately looks beyond the moment of receiving. More money may require better decisions. More attention may remove your privacy. More love may demand consistency. More success may force you to become disciplined on days when you do not feel inspired. A new beginning may require you to stop living like the person who asked for it. The manifestation is not only the reward, it is also the life you must become capable of carrying. This is why Saturn can feel heavy during a moment that should feel hopeful. It is not trying to destroy the desire. It is showing you the responsibility attached to it. The moon says, call it in. Saturn says, can you keep it? And that is the surprising message of this conjunction. Saturn is not blocking what you are asking for. It is deciding whether it would stay after it arrived. If you thought the conjunction was the only important part of today, there is something else you need to watch. Later, the Aries moon forms a challenging square with Mercury in Cancer. And this is where today's pressure can quietly move from your thoughts into your words. Something that felt perfectly clear earlier may suddenly become difficult to explain. You may feel tempted to defend yourself, justify a decision, send a message too quickly, or reach a conclusion simply because your mind wants relief. But clarity and urgency are not the same thing. The first conclusion that brings relief is not always the one that brings truth. This is where many people accidentally create a problem that did not exist before. They mistake temporary mental pressure for permanent certainty. They believe they have to say something immediately, decide immediately, or explain everything before the feeling passes. You don't. The conjunction reveals. Mercury asks you to describe what was revealed. Those are two very different things. Just because you cannot find the perfect words today does not mean your intuition was wrong. Some realizations become stronger when they are allowed to sit in silence before they are spoken. People spend so much time talking about what Saturn takes away that they rarely ask what it gives back. Yet that may be today's greatest surprise. Saturn has never removed things simply for the sake of removing them. It creates space for something that lasts longer than excitement ever could. Maybe you have felt scattered lately, constantly changing your mind, starting one thing, then another, feeling pulled in 10 different directions without knowing which one deserves your full attention. Today, Saturn may begin returning something you didn't realize you had lost. Stability. Not because everything around you suddenly becomes easier, but because something inside you finally stops moving. The greatest gift is not having more options. It is no longer needing them. That quiet feeling of certainty is worth far more than another burst of motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Excitement rises and falls. But when you finally trust the direction you're walking, you stop wasting energy looking over your shoulder. And perhaps that is Saturn's real gift today. Not giving you a new path, but making the right one feel solid beneath your feet once again. The Moon and Saturn may be meeting today, but they will not remain together for long. The Moon keeps moving. It carries the feeling of the moment forward, changes shape, and shifts attention somewhere else. Saturn stays. It holds the lesson in place long after the emotional intensity has passed. That is why something you feel today may disappear by tomorrow, while something you realize today could quietly influence the next several weeks. You may stop feeling the urgency. You may stop thinking about the conjunction. Life may return to its usual rhythm. But the standard you set, the truth you recognize, or the responsibility you finally accept may remain. Feelings introduce the message. Realizations decide whether it survives. This is what makes short conjunctions so powerful. They do not always create a long event. Sometimes they create one clear moment that changes how every later event is understood. The Moon may leave the meeting first, but Saturn keeps the record, and sometimes the shortest events in the sky leave the longest effects on the way you see your own life. There is one final possibility today that many people will completely misunderstand. Nothing dramatic may happen. There may be no obvious sign, no sudden arrival, and no perfect moment that proves the conjunction affected you. The evening may feel unusually plain, serious, or even boring. But that absence may be the event itself, because when nothing arrives to entertain you, distract you, or pull your attention somewhere else, you are left facing what you actually do with empty time. Do you immediately search for stimulation? Do you abandon the day because it does not feel important enough? Or can you remain present long enough to notice what becomes visible when excitement is no longer controlling your attention? Boredom is not always the absence of energy. Sometimes it is the moment distraction loses its power. Saturn may not give you a spectacle tonight. It may give you something far less exciting and far more revealing. A quiet space with nowhere to hide from your real priorities. And that is why an uneventful evening should not be dismissed. The conjunction may have already done its work the moment you stopped needing something dramatic to prove that something meaningful was happening. And now, it's time for today's comment of the day. If you can write down all the things that have broken you, destroyed you, and shook you inside out, and still be in a position to go and create something good, there is magic in that. We are stronger than we think we are. I really like the perspective behind this. It's easy to think that difficult experiences only leave damage behind, but sometimes they also reveal what you're made of. The fact that you've been through painful seasons doesn't mean you can't build something meaningful afterward. In fact, some of the kindest, strongest, and most compassionate people are the ones who had every reason to give up, but chose not to. That's why I like the last sentence so much. Sometimes you don't discover that strength until life gives you no other choice. Thank you for sharing this. The Moon-Saturn conjunction may create the pressure, but the most revealing part of today may happen after the two begin to separate. That is because pressure by itself does not decide anything. It simply shows you where you feel limited, where you feel responsible, and where you are no longer able to avoid a difficult truth. The real turning point comes later, when the moon moves into a square with Mercury, and everything that felt heavy begins searching for a way out through words, explanations, promises, accusations, and sudden decisions. This is where a serious feeling can become a careless action. You may spend part of the day feeling as though something needs to change immediately. A responsibility may feel heavier than usual. A situation may appear more final than it really is. You may become deeply aware of the distance between what you want and what your current life can actually support. None of that is necessarily dangerous. In fact, that pressure may be useful because it forces you to look at something honestly. The danger begins when you decide that the fastest way to escape the discomfort is to say something permanent. Someone may promise more than they can realistically deliver because they want to prove they are serious. Someone else may accuse another person of something they have not fully understood because anger feels easier than uncertainty. Another person may suddenly quit, commit, confess, confront, or completely change direction simply because making a decision gives them temporary relief from feeling trapped. The decision that ends the pressure fastest may create the longest consequence. That is the contradiction hidden inside today. Saturn makes people think about consequences, but the Aries moon wants immediate movement. Then Mercury in Cancer adds emotion to the way those thoughts are expressed. The result can be a moment where someone feels completely justified while speaking, only to realize later that they were not actually expressing certainty. They were expressing pressure. This is why the hours after the conjunction matter so much. During the meeting itself, you may notice the weight. Later, you reveal what kind of person you become under that weight. Do you rush to remove it, or can you hold it long enough to understand what it is trying to show you? Do you make a promise because you genuinely intend to keep it, or because saying it makes you feel more in control? Do you make an accusation because you know it is true, or because blaming someone gives your discomfort a clear target? There is a huge difference between a conclusion and an escape route, but in a pressured state, they can feel exactly the same. You may also notice that something which seemed obvious during the conjunction becomes much harder to explain later. That does not automatically mean the earlier realization was false. It may simply mean the feeling arrived before the language. People often damage a real insight by forcing it into words too quickly. They begin with something honest, then exaggerate it because the honest version does not sound strong enough. They add certainty they do not actually possess. They make the statement bigger, harsher, or more final, and eventually the words no longer match what they originally felt. A truth does not become stronger because you say it more dramatically. So the most important thing to understand is that today is not only revealing what you feel, it is revealing how you behave when a feeling refuses to leave immediately. That is the real test. You do not need to make the pressure disappear the moment it arrives. You do not need to create a permanent answer for a temporary state. Some realizations need time before they become decisions, and some decisions become wiser the moment you stop using them as a way to escape discomfort. The conjunction may be brief, but the words spoken after it can remain far longer. That is why the most important hours are not necessarily the ones when the Moon and Saturn are closest. They may be the hours afterward, when the sky stops applying pressure and begins revealing what you chose to do with it. A normal Moon-Saturn conjunction already brings two very different forces together. The Moon reacts quickly, while Saturn measures, delays, and considers what can survive over time. But today, that meeting takes place in Aries, and this changes the entire nature of the encounter because Aries is not a sign that enjoys waiting for certainty. Aries wants movement before the full picture appears. It wants to act, begin, declare, and find out what happens afterward. Saturn works in the opposite order. Saturn wants to understand the cost before the action is taken. It wants the structure before the expansion, the responsibility before the reward, and the evidence before the promise. That is why Saturn is traditionally considered uncomfortable in Aries. It is being asked to build inside an environment that wants to move faster than anything can be properly secured. This means today is not simply about emotion competing with responsibility. It is about speed competing with consequence. You may know exactly what you want to do, but not yet understand what doing it will require. You may feel ready to begin, but not ready for the routine that follows the beginning. You may feel brave enough to make a bold move, yet still resist the slower work needed to make that move successful. Aries can create the courage to act, while Saturn immediately asks whether that courage can survive after the adrenaline disappears. Starting proves desire, continuing proves capacity. That is what makes this conjunction more intense than it first appears. It can create a powerful urge to move forward while simultaneously making every possible consequence feel more serious. One part of you may say there is no more time to waste, while another part insists that one wrong move could create months of unnecessary difficulty. This can feel like frustration, but it is actually a collision between two different forms of intelligence. Aries understands that waiting forever can become its own mistake. Saturn understands that acting too quickly can turn a good opportunity into a burden. Neither force is completely wrong. The problem comes when one tries to erase the other. If Aries wins completely, you may act without preparation and call it courage. You may assume that confidence will solve problems that actually require consistency, patience, or skill. You may begin something because the first step feels powerful, without considering whether the 10th step will still make sense when nobody is watching and the excitement has faded. If Saturn wins completely, you may overthink the opportunity until the moment passes. You may keep waiting for conditions that will never become perfect. You may use responsibility as a respectable excuse for fear, convincing yourself that you are being careful when you are actually avoiding movement. Today places both of these tendencies in the same room. That is why the conjunction can feel so personal. It may expose exactly where you tend to move too quickly and exactly where you tend to wait too long. You may notice that you are impatient in areas that require patience, yet strangely hesitant in areas where immediate action would actually help. The energy does not simply tell you to slow down or speed up. It reveals where your timing has become disconnected from reality. Wisdom is not always moving slowly. Wisdom is knowing what deserves speed and what demands structure. This is also why desire may feel unusually serious today. Aries does not ask quietly, and Saturn does not answer casually. When you want something under this conjunction, the desire may come with an immediate awareness of what it would cost. You may imagine the success and the discipline at the same time. You may picture the new beginning while also seeing the habits you would need to leave behind. You may want the freedom, but suddenly understand the responsibility required to keep it. That realization can make some people think the universe is placing obstacles in front of them. In reality, the conjunction may be doing something far more valuable. It may be forcing the dream and the consequence to appear together before you make the choice, rather than after. This meeting feels like it should not be happening in Aries because Saturn cannot move in its usual way here. It has to work with urgency. It has to teach patience without destroying momentum. It has to introduce consequence without turning courage into fear. And Aries, in return, has to learn that moving first does not mean moving blindly. The real power of today is not choosing between speed and patience. It is learning how to let them correct each other. Aries gives Saturn the courage to begin before every detail is perfect. Saturn gives Aries the strength to remain after the excitement is gone. And to everyone who stayed until the end, thank you for giving this moment your attention. This conjunction may only last a few hours, but what it makes you notice could stay with you much longer. So do not rush to understand everything today. Keep moving. Keep trusting what feels solid. And remember that not every serious moment is a bad sign. Sometimes it is simply life showing you what is finally strong enough to last. Good things can still be on the way, even when the energy feels heavier than expected. Take care of yourself